Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting. The City of the Future is a Green City. I'd like to give a warm welcome to those of you here with us in Geneva and to those joining us online. We have a tight schedule today, so we're going to get started right away. For those online, we do encourage you to use the chat during the meeting to share questions, exchange with other people on the call. We should have some time at the end also for questions for the panelists. So without further ado, I'm very honored to welcome Ms. Paula Dera, the Director of the Forest, Land and Housing Division here at UNECE, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much to all those that came here in person on our steps and the many that are joining online. I wanted to start today by giving you some good news because we are in the middle of the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, and what we hear a lot is challenges, problems. And today I wanted to talk about a solution. Let me just start by saying with just a bit of anecdote. I'm an architect, and I know we have also archistars that are joining us today. And when I was studying, when trees were simply just round dots on bigger plants, and what the architects were looking very much was buildings, and green spaces were all sort of afterthought. But architecture has changed a lot. How you will see from what, for instance, architect Borreri has done, trees now are part of the architecture, become the architecture. And that indicates a really different way of thinking and a very different way of acknowledging that trees are solutions. And they're actually technological solutions that are very advanced. We don't have anything man-made that can do the same things that trees can do. So we are living in an urban area. This is where solutions should be used and should be found. Cities are on the front line of SDGs, and green cities are cost-effective, nature-based solutions, that's how we call them now, to future-proof cities and to mitigate the effects of climate change, but also obviously to increase biodiversity in cities. Green cities stand a much better chance to advance local, national, and global climate and development goals in synergies, and that is really the good news of the day. We should make sure that we see trees in the context of cities all the time, beyond, of course, our work of growing cities elsewhere. Many of you have heard already, but I think it's important to stress why the trees technology is so important. It cools cities, reduce temperature up to 8 degrees in cities. So we know what this when there are heat waves, what this could mean, and reduces energy expenditures to cool homes as a consequence. Reduce flood and landslide risks, contributes to urban food production, another key, crucial challenge we have heard yesterday, for instance, in the SDG 11 roundtable, and creates green jobs. Well, all this is done when they build vibrant communities, because shaded streets attract shoppers, tourists, diners, and people in general. They increase property values, so this is good also for the real estate market. And greenways and parks should improve our well-being and provide space for recreation and exercise. Shaded parks and plazas provide space to socialize with friends and neighbors, and urban food production, community, and rooftop architecture, and increased food security. I know that some of you, might seem obvious, but tell me when you go out in a city and you really find all this. When you find it, you appreciate the city, and you say the city is very special because the city gave you these green spaces to enjoy. So what do we have to do? Well, it's very simple. We need equitable tree covers in all neighbors in the cities to leave nobody behind. Green spaces must be inclusive, accessible to women, children, older persons, and persons with disabilities, as called for by SDG 11.7, the target. And green spaces and trees should be close. You will hear it a lot from us. The 330-300 rule is very simple. See at least 3 trees 3 trees from each window, have 30% canopy cover, and ensure the nearest quality green space is within 300 meters from your home. So as cities evolve, urban trees, forests, and green spaces must be planned, managed, and financed sustainably over time, like a cohesive living network. And here I come back to what I was saying at the beginning. They are part of the architecture. They are part of the urban planning. They are part of the urban design system. They are not an add-on. Green cities also need the commitment and buy-in by all, so not only architects, but also city planners, landscape architects, of course, but also those responsible for infrastructure and development. It's not only the design part, but it's also the administration and the overall infrastructure development that counts. National policy action, however, is also crucial to maximize and scale up their benefits. So we have been looking at the local level, where it's important that trees are planted within the city, by the city, but national governments benefit from green cities and urban trees as well, because they reduce a burden on national healthcare systems, they reduce the peak energy demand on the national energy grid, and they reduce carbon emissions and contribute to the Paris targets. So urban trees for cities work, and this is why they must be on the national, local, and global SDG implementation agenda. At UNECE, we work towards including urban trees in our work with national governments for national as well as local plans. And we do it actually through two programs, the one on forest and forest industry and the one on urban development. Important, just to remind you, one of our latest products is the Trees for Resilient Green Cities Strategic Screening and Action Toolkit, which I encourage you to use and share with your networks. A link is available in the meeting chat. So this is just one example of our work to support cities and national governments and to deliver urban trees and forests as nature-based solutions to build inclusive, safe, sustainable, and resilient cities in line with SDG 11. This is all from me. I hope you have an idea now of what our event will be about, and I'm definitely delighted now to introduce architect Stefano Boeri to deliver a keynote address. For those of you who do not know Stefano Boeri, I think you all do, especially if you are in this field, because not only Stefano is an Archistar, but he's an Archistar of trees as well. Mr. Stefano Boeri is architect and urban planner and is full professor of urban planning at the Politecnico in Milan and directs the Future City Lab at Tongji University in Shanghai. He's also president of the Scientific Committee of Forestami, the urban forestry project in the Milan metropolitan area. He's also the architect of the Bosco Verticale. I'm pretty sure you all know and seen this iconic building several times. It was built in Milan in 2014. And Boeri's work ranges from architecture and urban visions to design, with a constant focus on the geopolitical and environmental implications of urban phenomena. In addition to his design activities, Stefano is known for his research, visions, and master plans on the future of the urban condition in the world, which have seen him involved in designing regeneration and development plans for cities including São Paulo, Geneva, Tirana, Cancun, Riyadh, Cairo, Milan, and many others. Over to you, Stefano. It's really an honor for us to have you here with us today. Stefano, you are muted. I'm told you are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Yes. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Paula, and thank you, UNECE, for this invitation. Well, I would like to start with a consideration related to the fact that we are facing a global transformation at the macroeconomic, political, geopolitical, demographic, and environmental levels. And this leads all of us to reflect on our role on the planet, and in particular, we as architect, designer, urban planner, to rethink pattern of living on our planet and in cities, which are the habitat where the world's growing population will increasingly be concentrated. Well, if we imagine grouping all the world cities together, let's imagine a kind of huge urban Pangea, we see how they would occupy no more than 3% of the Earth's surface. But at the same time, this 3% would be responsible for emitting 75% of global CO2 and consuming 70% of energy. In addition, urban demographic development follows precise trajectories that tell us how, in countries now considered to be developing, much of the transformation of the macro-urban landscape will take place. If we consider that already today, 1/3 of the urban population live in slums and informal settlements, population growth and migration flows, also related to environmental migration, will really complicate a picture the picture of city life that is already deeply compromised. At the same time, however, if we imagine grouping all forest and woodlands together, we see how they would have enormous potential, precisely in absorbing CO2 emitted by cities, as well as in multiplying biodiversity. Well, from this very, let's say, climatic consideration, taking action in cities and bringing greenery to cities is a fundamental choice if we want the urban habitat to remain the primary living place of our species. We have discussed this issue in many different contexts, and we also discussed this in our recent publication, Green Obsession, with expert scientists, politicians, researchers, philosophers, and activists with whom we are building a network of international experiences on the topic of urban forestry. So what are the strategies to multiply trees in cities and open a different relationship with living nature? Well, one of the ways, probably not the most important, and certainly not the only way, it's the vertical forestation, vertical forest. Conceived as a house for trees, but also houses humans. The vertical forest that we have built in Milano 10 years ago has become, over the years, an icon of biodiversity in architecture and a symbol of goal 11 among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. A building designed to primarily house plants and trees and follow their development and growth for innovation and technical solutions that were first realized here in Milano and now exported in many other parts of the world with different features and different goals. In particular, I will show you here just one of our, let's say, experiments, the Eindhoven project built 2 years ago, where we created the first vertical forest in social housing, therefore with low construction cost and controlled rental cost, accessible to all, so a really affordable building. This aspect of accessibility and social inclusion within the vertical forest model has been a fundamental point of our research. For us today, the forest of Eindhoven is habited by students and young couples, and well, it's inside a redeveloped neighborhood with a post-industrial vocation. Another fundamental challenge we have been working on is making urban forestation not only vertical to reduce soil consumption and accessible to all, but also to bring forestation to arid climates, as we are doing in North Africa and in countries in the Middle East. The theme of heat and shadow, as we have seen recently, and well, you see here a satellite photo of a European Space Agency, has become a dramatic problem everywhere in all cities of the world. In this, greenery, as we see from the map, has a key potential to improve microclimate, reduce the heat island effect, and reduce urban temperature. You see here how, for instance, the vertical forest Milano is let's say, one of the place where the heat is drastically reduced thanks to the presence of an intensity of plants. Another fundamental issue related to urban forestation is that of water. The management, recycling, recovery of water, desalination processes, and rainwater accumulation basins are an urgency on the agenda of international urban policies in a context of global drought. And you see here, for instance, an experiment and a prototype work developed for Dubai and that will be presented at the next COP in Dubai in some months, where you see these two towers that are, let's say, working with plants and also small greenhouse that have a very serious water management system that reduce at maximum the consumption of water. And thanks to the solar panels that are on the facade are also consuming only renewable energies. Again, the theme of energy combined with the urban forestation. In Cancun, in Southeast Mexico, we are imagining the first smart forest city, which is conceived as a settlement that integrates living nature and architecture in a completely self-sufficient and costed from an energetical point of view. Well, let's go ahead. Just to see some other examples, we are working, as you know, starting from the concept of Richard Weller, who was proposing this idea of a world park. It was a way, let's say, to connect all the major biodiversity hotspots of the planet, multiplying the advantages of this connection. And we know all well how, for instance, what has been built in Africa with this amazing green wall that since 29 all the countries in Africa were building, from Senegal to Ethiopia, is an amazing demonstration of the capacity that we could have, the country of the world could have, to do something of very serious in terms of connecting through forestry, dirt corridor, biological biodiversity corridors, different green contest in the world. At the same time, we are, as you know, well involved in the paying for urban forestation. This is what we are doing in Milano. We are planning to plant 3 million plants for 2030. And this is, we believe, the most inclusive and democratic, the less expensive, and the most efficient way to tackle down percentage of global warming and to increase, in this case, the canopy, the green canopy. I know that you are in Genève, and I'd love to show you something about Genève, where, well, we have imagined it, we have been asked to let's say, to work on the future of the metropolitan environment in Genève, and we have imagined a metropolitan constellation that unites Genève and Annecy around the mountain of Salève. And in this case, the urban project revolves directly around the natural element, which becomes the fundamental fulcrum of urban settlement. So at the center of this new urban constellation, you don't have, let's say, a square, you don't have a monument or a church, but you have a mountain, the mountain with this amazing biodiversity. And this is a way to, let's say, redefine the geography and also the logic and the layout of a metropolitan environment, as Genève is. Well, out of all this experience, I just want to finish with some discussion about Parco Italia. Of this project, Parco Italia is in a way, let's say, a consequence of the direct relation consequence with what we have done with Richard Weller, and it aims to reconnect all the metropolitan area through green system in Italy. And it's something that we are working on, and it will open a new perspective for, let's say, protection and extension of biodiversity hotspots in our country. Well, finally, I take this opportunity to announce the upcoming World Forum on Urban Forest that we are organizing in Washington with FAO, together with several experts, including Cecil Conendijk, that you know well, with whom we had the pleasure of recording an episode of the podcast for UNECE series, which will be broadcasted soon. Thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Architect Boeri. Thank you so much. Actually, we are very proud that you are joining forces with UNECE through the podcast and through your interventions to make this message about the importance of trees in cities louder. And it's really with this partnership that we are sure we are reaching out much more than we could do alone. So thank you very much again for your intervention during this important meeting of the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. We are reviewing this year SDG 11. SDG 11 is the SDG of cities, and it's really important to stress that when we talk about SDG 11, we talk about all infrastructure, including the green infrastructures in cities. So thank you again for helping us with this message. Well, if you are still on for a moment, we would like to introduce now our video. Is a new video which we are launching today. It's called White Trees, and invite us. It's a video that invites us to reflect on our human connection with trees around us. And this from today will be posted on YouTube and then available to the largest public. Over to you, Daniel, for the video.
Trees are small islands of nature in the city.
City trees supply oxygen,
They themselves are part of biodiversity.
provide shade, capture dust that's in the air.
The trees give us fresh air.
They are places of life.
Now picture your community, held by the roots of generosity. Branches wide with the gifts of food, shade, and peace. Can you see it?
In green areas where there are many trees, it is about 5, 6, 7 degrees cooler on summer nights than in densely built up areas. And this effect is carried into the neighborhood as well.
My mother grew up in a town whose hills had no trees. Birds nested under roofs instead of tree canopies. When it rained, the dirt would slide through their homes, through their streets, flooding living rooms with mud, thick and heavy as concrete.
In every culture and in every country, in every city at any time, trees have played such an important role.
This brilliant living technology, inhaling the harm of what we discard, exhaling clean air for us to breathe. Close your eyes and picture a city without trees. Can you hear it? The near silent breeze, with no leaves rustling, paper music, or crackling beneath walking feet.
That would be a dead city without trees.
Now picture what is missing from your memories. No treehouse or fruit you can simply pick up and eat.
We need to invest in trees because otherwise the city will become unhealthy. Healthcare costs are increasing.
It's an obligation to the next generation.
And that's why it's actually a win-win situation for the trees, for nature, but also for us, the people in the city.
In order to have old trees, we have to start planting trees in time and provide appropriate spaces so that trees can actually grow.
The picture of our future can sometimes look bleak, but we can grow a future when we invest in sustaining life.
And all that we would lose if we don't focus on bringing trees and the lives of people together in the city.
We need staff to achieve that and the corresponding funds for it.
If we promote and foster trees in cities, we can mitigate some of the effects of climate change.
when we plan and build cities known for their trees and not concrete, when we all plant and care for them to sustain life locally, to sustain life globally. Now is the time to act with every tool we have. We need trees in cities.
Well, thank you. And a particular thank you for this video to Liliana, who's the chief of section, because she had this vision of having a video like this that is not the usual documentary style video, but it's really a call from people. I would say even a poetical call from people. So we trust that this message and this video will appeal really to the hearts of people to understand the importance of planting trees in cities, and also maybe also to pledge to the Trees in Cities Challenge, which is an initiative we launched a few years ago and is growing exponentially. So thank you, Liliana and her team. After this video, let me invite and introduce our moderator today. I've been speaking too much so far, so I'm happy to give it to a moderator. Our moderator today is Stefania Romana from ICLEI. Ms. Stefania Romano is a global coordinator of the ICLEI International Partnership Initiative, Cities with Nature and Regions with Nature. With an extended experience in environmental international affairs, Ms. Romano has previously worked for the Italian Ministry of the Environment, seconded to international organizations such as the Regional Environmental Center. She has also contributed to grassroots movements such as DM25, coordinating the Green New Deal for the Europe campaign, and social and humanitarian programs with multiple organizations. So thank you, Stefania, for being here. We are delighted to partner with ICLEI and Cities with Nature. Thank you also for being our moderator today, and the floor is yours. And I'll say goodbye to all of you. I'll be here. You will not see me, but I will be here with the people sitting on the steps. Thank you. Over to you, Stefania.
Thank you, Paola. I have to say that that's been quite an inspirational introduction, fed with the architecture and institutional styles like Mr. Boeri and yourself, and also this very emotional video, which really made us feel what it means, trees like living creatures, as much as we are living creatures that breathe in through the trees. In fact, I'm the global coordinator of these two international partnership initiatives, Cities with Nature and Regions with Nature, that are shared platforms where cities and partners engage and connect towards a more sustainable urban world. And we have more than 25 partners all throughout. And in fact, very recently, we have been reaching 285 cities. And I have to say that within the Italian content and frame, also Palermo has been the first cities to come in. And let me very shortly say how UNECE joined as a partner into Cities with Nature. We had a magnificent announcement ceremony in Montreal, and we are signed up with a collaboration with Trees in Cities Challenge. Cities with Nature offers a number of benefits and functionalities, among which the action platform, which is recognized by the CBD, and we have specifically three areas, and in one, which is use nature sustainably, urban forestry fits in specifically in action 6, which is about equitable benefits through sustainable use of wild species, but also another area is the number 7, which is biodiversity in urban agriculture, aquaculture, and forestry. When it comes to other functionalities of cities with nature, we also offer tools and resources hub, where, for example, we have a specific feeder run with FAO. Now, before opening the floor to the panelists, I just want to show this picture that I like very much, which shows how a tree stump, in fact, looks very much like our human fingerprint. So as much as we protect trees, we protect our life as well. I'm particularly proud to be introducing the 3 speakers today, because I had the chance to be having quick calls with them last week and really are now aligning their purposes, scopes, and presentations for today. The first panelist is Professor Suarez, her presentation is about her intervention, is about what we harvest, the benefits of investing in trees for all neighborhoods. And in fact, she will really give in science perspective, the ecosystem services and trees in Lisbon. Professor Suarez, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank you for this invitation to participate, and I will share my PowerPoint, my presentation. It's okay? Sorry.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
You can see? Thank you. Thank you. So first, we'll talk about the benefits of investing in trees for all neighbors. The increasing urbanization allowed significant social change and enhanced conditions to live and well-being in cities. So it's very positive and very important. And we can have the beauty of the trees in the city. In the autumn, for example, we can see the colors of the trees like ginkgo biloba. In the winter, we can see the branches and the graphic design of the trees, and like Platon's Hispanica, or in the spring, the flowers like Lastrenia indica, in the summer, the fruits of the trees like Brachycheton papulnus, and all of these trees offers a beauty to the city in all the seasons. That it's the magic of the trees in the city. We can have different scenarios all during the year. However, we have harmful impacts, as we all know, on urban ecology has been compromising by the sustainability of the cities, air pollution, climate change with rising temperatures, heat waves, and occurrence of extreme precipitation, sea level, stormwater management, and loss of biodiversity. So the trees should we see not only for their beauty, it's unquestionable, but also because the trees can mitigate some of these problems that we are living, actually, like the climate change and all the loss of biodiversity and all of these problems that we are facing, actually. So, beside the beauty of the trees, we must invest in planting more trees. So we need trees in the city. We need shade, we need air, clean air, and all these things that we have always talking, and we had already talking this morning. The presence of the trees can confirm that contributes to improving air quality, shade, regulating air temperature, improving hydrology, and controlling erosion to increase biodiversity. And it also plays an important role in aesthetic value, in social and recreational well-being. Well, now about Lisbon trees. Lisbon benefits from privilege. That's why I'm sharing my the experience with my team in trees, in Lisbon trees. Lisbon benefits from privileged climate conditions due both to its geographical location between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean and its topography marked by the 7 hills that provides a range of sun exposures. So we have 100 kilometers squared of area, a soft climate, a geographical situation, topography, and all these conditions allow to host a high plant species diversity with native and exotic tree species. And this ecosystem service, this urban ecosystem service, should be quantified, how the benefits provide to the city comparing to the maintenance costs, because of course we have trees in the city, it's fantastic, and we can have lots of trees, but we have also the costs to maintenance this. But we want to show that the benefits are much higher than the costs to invest the trees. And there are some programs, for example, Strato and I3, that we applied in 2011 in Lisbon, and we found a result, it's very summarizing, a result that the trees provide 4.5 times more benefits than costs. So and we also want to see that it's not all the, of course there are all the trees, but there are some trees that have more benefits than the other ones. So it's interesting, and for each place, as we say, in the right plant in the right place. So it's very important to know which are the best tree you should plant in the city, in Lisbon or in Barcelona or in Milan or New York, in which, so we have to decide the best plant. In Lisbon, for example, the best species we have found in this program, it was the platums, the celtis and poplus and Cecilia. This program also allows to study different scenarios of tree composition, constituting therefore a very useful tool in urban planning. Actually, in my research center, CABN, from Instituto Superior de Agronomia da Universidade de Lisboa, we have two research projects in order to quantify the trees. So I call the trees by number in order to quantify and to understand their benefits and their costs. The first project, called LX Gardens, Lisbon's Historic Gardens and Parks Study and Landscape Heritage Inventory. It was financed by Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia. We study the gardens and parks and, of course, the composition of the trees. We made the inventory of 64 gardens and parks in order to know all the names of the trees in these gardens. Another project that I show here to you is the project called LX3, and we have made a protocol with the Lisbon municipality, and we support with technical and scientific assistance and development of specialized studies for the quantification of ecosystem service provided by the street trees of City of Lisbon. So the first one is to the trees of gardens and parks, and the second one is for the street trees. Of course, in both projects, we made a tree inventory. The tree inventory is an important tool to urban planning to allow to organization the tree inventories as well to quantify the ecosystem service. The project LX Gardens, we organize the gardens in Lisbon in the 6 typology: botanical gardens, gardens, squares with trees, gardens with exceptional view, parks and farms. And for all these gardens that we have studied, we had made a GIS localization of the tree and inventory of the tree. And in summarizing, in 64 gardens, we found 27,000 trees belonging to 799 taxa and 103 family. 35% are native trees, 61% are exotic trees, and 4% are invasive trees. And here is the list of the 12 most representative species in the city, in the gardens and parks. Celtis australis, it's the first one, Oleia europaea, second one, Cupressus sempervirens, Platans hispanica, Pinus pinea, and Jacaranda mimosifolia. So all these trees are beautifying our city and also give some important ecosystem service to the city. These are the three more important, Celtis australis, Oleia europaea and Cupressus sempervirens. And for the LX tree, for the street trees, what we have in the city, in the municipality, we have around 100,000 trees, corresponding to 469 different taxa. And by our project, we inventory 64,000 trees, and we had made a sample of these trees measuring 60,000 trees in order to apply again the I3 program to compare the difference that we have found in 2011 and now in 2021 with the same program. We don't have all the results here to present you. We are working on that, but we have already some interesting results. So this is the I3 that we have used, the information that we have to input to the software, and all the information that they estimated. We have some I3 workshop in our university, and we have lots of field work. We have inventory all these trees marked in the map of the city of Lisbon, and we have the coordinators of the trees, the measurements of the PAP, the occupation. We identify the species, the height total, and all other informations. Here is our team. We have a comparison with the gardens, the LX gardens and LX trees, what we found in the gardens and we found in the street trees. The more dominant are always the Celtis australis. The second one is Oleia europaea in the gardens, and in the street trees, Jacaranda mimosifolia. So it's very interesting to know the trees, not only by numbers and also by the name of the trees. So it's very important also for the population to know the name of the trees in order to like more the trees, to appreciate more the trees. And this is our number one, Celtis australis, Oleia europaea, the second one, the third one, Jacaranda mimosifolia. All these information that we are working, this output information could be done by outdoors information, like we have already worked to Cascais municipality, and they made some outdoor information in order to explain to the population how it's important to have trees in the city, because, for example, in Cascais, the trees produce 16 toneladas by here get out the pollutants of the air and produce 60 toneladas from here from oxygen. So it's very important to know the trees in order to love them and to protect them. We have a small film in order to know better what we are doing. I don't know if we have time to see, but I just show a little one if it allows me.
We don't necessarily have the time to see
now,
it.
Okay. But if you want, you can see
exactly.
okay.
Exactly.
And
no,
so we want just to thank you to share our work that we have done in Lisbon City. Thanks for all your attention.
Professor Soares, such a pleasure. We could totally feel, you know, your background, in fact, is you have a PhD in landscape architecture, and we could all feel, you know, besides being pro-rector of the University of Lisbon, we could totally feel all this passion of understanding trees in terms of numbers, in terms of names, you know, how to maintain them, which trees in which city. So it's quite a very good mapping for teaching how it can be really replicable in other cities as well. Thank you so much, Professor Suarez.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
A pleasure for us as well. And now I will just give the floor to Professor Randrup. Professor Randrup is a professor at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. For the last 25 years, you've been studying urban forestry and, in fact, the role of and the use of urban trees and the spaces for humans. And what is interesting is that you will really give the more policy and science perspective. I remember when we had the discussion last week, like the long-term management within the 3 dimensions of users, cities, and green space. So, Professor Randrup, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me in. I will start sharing. And I hope you can see my presentation. There we are. Right, thank you very much. I will zoom out a little bit maybe and talk very briefly about the foundations for making a city inclusive, seen from an urban forestry and not least the green space management perspective. And referring a little bit back to the introduction, very nice introduction by Paola Data. I'll talk about both the challenges, but also some of the solutions. First, I'd like to talk or introduce a little bit about some of the terms in terms of organizational, institutional thinking, which is still kind of influencing the way that we are dealing with trees in urban areas today. It's called New Public Management, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the term. It was introduced in the 80s, and it still shapes the way that we're dealing with our cities today. It was introduced in the 80s in a firm belief that, you know, there was a need to deliver better service to the public, basically. It was about revitalization of the public organization, not least the cities. And it was very much inspired by the... It was very much inspired by the private bit. I don't know. There's some talk.
Yes, can you please mute yourselves? Could the organizers mute the non-speakers?
Sorry. The new public management was very much inspired by private businesses with emphasis on budget responsibility. And that was a firm belief that there was a better need to actually focus on the budgeting in public organizations. It was about improving performances, securing efficiency, a better economic control. And it was about outsourcing. It was about reaching out to the private businesses. In terms of urban forestry, green space management, that meant or had a huge influence on how cities actually dealt with green spaces, because now it became something about contract management. And it was actually about steering nature via very detailed descriptions and control measures in order to deal with this outsourcing. If a private contractor was to deliver a service, we needed also to describe what they were supposed to do, and we needed to be able to control what they were delivering. So basically, you can claim that it was about fragmentizing nature. And focus was very much about operations and about how to do things. And on this picture, you can see there's different types of grass, and they had to be described and measured in different ways. And so also with the trees. So yeah, so that was the main thing. Now we're moving in to a new kind of era, a new paradigm called new public governance, which is about very much about dealing with informal relations. It's about trust. It's about knowledge sharing, which is a kind of a contradiction to the new public management regime. It's also about dealing with or setting up systems which can deal with these very complex or wicked problems that we're dealing with today, or that we just heard about: climate change, health issues, biodiversity loss, etc. And there's a need for these cross-sectoral answers to this. You know, this cannot just be dealt with by a technical department in itself. New public governance is also relating to an increase or limited management resources, a continuous focus on not having efficient or enough funding for the long-term management. And new public governance is very much about the social orientation. It's about the involvement of users. It's about generating common understandings of what the public value really is. And in terms of dealing with green spaces or urban forest, there's still a huge influence from new public management in local governments today, but we also have all these new terms like nature-based solutions, where basically it's about being inspired by nature. And it's about dealing with multifunctionality. So a green space or a tree in itself is not only dealing with one thing, we have to deal with many different aspects. And I think this picture from Olympic Park in London is a very good example of that, dealing with climate change, recreation, biodiversity, all at the same time. But also the public wants to and expect to be involved. And this is new, or new at least, this has grown. So this is also about new public governance, is also about creating new partnerships. As about setting up cities and asking also the question about why we're doing things and not only how we're doing things. However, cities, administrations, organizations today are still being challenged by the way we are organizing ourselves in primarily silos. And I'm sure a lot of you would recognize this, that in dealing with green spaces or urban forest, we're still planning, we're designing, we're constructing, and then we're maintaining. And we have introduced this term called strategic management, where we actually try to see this not as a project of establishing things, but seeing this more as a process, just like nature, seeing it in a long-term perspective and see if we can incorporate a common kind of planning, designing, construction, and maintenance in a long-term perspective. Acknowledging that over 150 years or 200 years where a green space exists or a tree grows, we need to constantly replan and redesign and reconstruct as society changes. Who knew about the challenges that we're dealing with right now just 2 years ago? So we need to constantly change, and we need to see this in a more kind of holistic manner. And being a little bit maybe creative here, you can claim that we have 3 dimensions to deal with in management. We have the organization, owning, managing the spaces. We obviously have the spaces, the trees themselves, and we have the users. We have the end users, also the taxpayers, you can say, those who's actually paying for the management of stuff. With a little bit of creativity, you can claim that this is actually related to sustainability. So management of urban forest is actually a sustainable approach. Organizations being the economic perspective, the green spaces themselves being the ecological perspective, and the users representing the social perspectives. And as we just heard about from Professor Suarez, about the ecosystem services, about the trees, the green spaces delivering some kind of a service. You know, that could be the question of what are the green spaces actually delivering in terms of giving benefits, services to the public. And then it's about how to deliver it. You know, still it's about how do we set up management organizations in terms of both planning, designing, constructing, but also long-term maintenance, having this strategic management approach to delivering the right services for the users. And not at least, this is about the relationship between the organizations and the users. And this is what we call governance in a very broad term. It's all about user engagement, but also about why. So lifting or changing from a perspective of dealing with a very rational way of dealing with green spaces, and primarily asking the question about how do we grow things, how do we make things work. This is also a question about why do we do things and involving people. So with that, I conclude here. Thank you very much.
Well, Professor Randrup, very, I would say, fascinating. You know, the inclusiveness that you brought up, the combined governance with the management approach. We don't have to be thinking and looking at things in silos, but in the long term, and exactly being, clear also, not about the how, but the why. You know, the why, which sometimes is forgotten. So thanks so much for that. From Lisbon to Sweden, now we pass to Central Asia. It's an interesting, comprehensive picture that we're just delivering today. And I just pass the floor to the last panelist of ours today of this interesting conversation. And just for the audience, the questions will come after the panelists. So now I give the floor to Mrs. Merim Kideralieva from the city of Bishkek. Mrs. Kideralieva has been joining the mayor's office in 2019. Before that, she was a leading specialist in the training and external relations department at the State Personnel Service in Kyrgyz Republic. And what is interesting is that she will tell us about the local initiatives, Bishkek Greening. So the measures that focus on the development of green areas, planting trees and promoting sustainable living practices in your cities. Please, Mrs. Kideraleva, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, dear all. Let me share some details about work we do in the city of Bishkek. We have a special unit in the mayor's office structure named Bishkek Zilenkhoz, and our colleagues from the Bishkek Zilenkhoz organize several projects on trees. One of these projects is Bishkek Greening. Bishkek Greening refers to a series of initiatives aimed at improving the environmental conditions in the city of Bishkek. The project involves a range of measures that focus on the development of green areas, planting trees, and promoting sustainable living practices. One of the key objectives of Bishkek Greening is to increase the city's green space, which is currently limited. This includes the planting of trees, the establishment of parks and public gardens, and the implementation of rooftop gardens and green walls. The project also aims to improve the maintenance and management of existing green areas to ensure they are properly cared for and preserved. Another important component of Bishkek Greening is the promotion of sustainable practices. This includes encouraging cities to adopt environmentally friendly behaviors, such as reducing waste, conserving water and energy, and using public transportation or cycling instead of cars. The project also improves the implementation of waste management systems, including recycling and composting programs. Overall, Bishkek Greening is a comprehensive approach to improving the environmental conditions in the city. By focusing on the development of green areas and promoting sustainable living practices, the project aims to enhance the quality of life for citizens and contribute to the long-term sustainability of the city. Next slide, please. Recently, our president of our country, Sadir Japarov, launched a country-wide campaign, Jashil Muras. Jashil Muras is a Kyrgyz term that translates to green heritage in English. It refers to the natural environment and cultural heritage of Kyrgyzstan and the importance of preserving and protecting it for future generations. The concept of Jashil Muras encompasses a range of initiatives aimed at promoting sustainable development and environmental conservation in Kyrgyzstan. This includes the protection of forests, wildlife, and water resources, as well as the preservation of cultural and historical sites. Next slide, please. Many organizations and government agencies, including Mayor's Office in Kyrgyzstan, are working to promote Jashil Muras through education and awareness campaigns, as well as the development of policies and regulations to support sustainable development and environmental conservation. The concept of Jashil Muras reflects the deep connection between the natural environment and cultural heritage in Kyrgyzstan, and the importance of preserving both for the benefit of current and future generations. Next slide, please. In the context of Bishkek, the city can play a critical role in achieving several SDGs, including SDG 11. Bishkek can contribute to this goal by promoting sustainable urbanization, improving access to affordable housing, developing efficient public transportation, and reducing the environmental impact of urbanization. SDG 3, Bishkek can contribute to this goal by improving access to the healthcare services, promoting healthy lifestyles, and reducing air and water pollution. SDG 7, Bishkek can contribute to this goal by promoting the use of renewable energy sources, improving energy efficiency, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. SDG 5, gender equality. Bishkek can contribute to this goal by promoting gender equality and women empowerment, improving access to education and employment opportunities for women, and reducing gender-based violence. SDG 8, Bishkek can contribute to this goal by promoting economic growth, creating job opportunities. And SDG 4, Bishkek can contribute to this goal by improving access to quality education. And SDG 6, Bishkek can contribute to this goal by improving access to clean drinking water and sanitation facilities, reducing water pollution, and promoting sustainable water use. In conclusion, Bishkek has a significant role to play in achieving the SDGs, and by mobilizing city action towards achieving these goals, the city can become a model for sustainable development and contribute to creating a more equitable and prosperous world for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. But your presentation really makes me think that when the Sustainable Development Goals were launched in New York, I can't forget that we were just very happy and enthusiastic on one side, but on the other side, we thought of how will it really happen? How will it really translate into local actions? And here it is, and you explained it quite clearly how your city is really linking up to specific goals and how, besides the fact that it's absolutely fascinating, the Jashimuras, as you were saying, the green heritage, how cultural identity is important and is strongly interlinked with environmental challenges that we're facing nowadays. So I would say that our panelists were absolutely brilliant. I've been learning myself so much. Now it's time for questions from the audience. I don't know if there are specific questions coming from the participants that we are happy to be taking on to board for our three speakers. Looking at the chat.
I don't see anything in the chat. We have one in the room, though.
Okay, please.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hristo Dikansky from the Aga Khan Development Network. Cities are quite short in space, and so we can't grow big forests. Even in Portugal, in Bishkek, we saw that with large increases in tree numbers, still it's quite a small proportion of the city. So what about microforests, and how can we maximize the use of planting in the small spaces that we have? Thank you.
Microforests, quite a pertinent question. Thank you so much. Anyone from the panelists would like to pick it up? Please.
Yeah, I can maybe reflect on that. I think this microforest theme is blooming all over the world right now. Actually, I'm going to assess one of our theses tomorrow about microforest in Sweden. So it's really coming up, and I think it's an interesting concept on a very small site, still though requiring maybe like 300 square meters as a minimum. But the principle of prioritizing nature and basically saying that it's not difficult to get things to grow even in cities if we allow trees room to grow. So basically, this is a political decision really to prioritize, for example, parking lots versus microforest. So I think we as green space managers and planners, urban foresters, etc., we know what it takes, and it's not really that difficult to make a tree grow, but it needs and requires place, and that is a political decision. And microforest is a good answer to that because it delivers a lot of ecosystem services in a very small space.
No, absolutely. I remember Professor about when we had our conversation last week, it's always about political decision, political willingness. So technology is there, solutions are there, and now it's
Indeed.
about how to be putting into practice from the political point of view. Professor Suarez, I don't know whether you also want to be adding in concerning this query question about the microforest. Maybe you also have some insights about it, Professor Suarez.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, it's an important challenge for this actuality to make this kind of forest, and of course you are working on that. But first I think we need to, that's why I insist in knowing the name of the trees to understand which are the best species that we can have in the city, and of course then we can combine and organizing microforests. We have a big effect, maximize the benefits of the trees in the city. So of course, yes, we can work on that. In Lisbon, we have a big forest area that it was not included in this area called Park of Monsanto. It's around 1,000 hectares of full of trees, lots of trees. So it's a very good green area in the city. But of course we have to have another options to implement the microforest in the city.
No, again, it's so much important knowing which trees. It's not about planting trees overall. It's about being really having the background information and then act accordingly. And great that there are already very good examples that can be certainly replicable according to the environment where they're just brought in. Thanks so much. Now, I don't know whether there are other questions from the audience. They are in person, in presence.
Yes, we have a question here in the room. There's also one in the chat.
Fantastic. So let's start from
maybe
the
I can
one in
read
the room.
Yeah, the one in the chat after the question from the room.
Okay.
Hello there. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, and I've enjoyed all the speakers. My question is, how can students and youth encourage investment of trees in their community?
Fantastic. So again, can we just turn to our panelists for answering this very question? Professor Randrup.
Sure. I mean, thank you very much for the question. It's very good. We're talking about these, sometimes, we use the marginalized groups, and how can we make them, how can we give them a voice? And I think they are challenged. So I guess that's why you're asking the question also. There was a question in the chat now going to this collective awareness, if that could be a term being used also, and I think maybe that can relate a little bit to your question.
Okay, great.
In the sense that there is this I think there is a growing collective awareness about the value of green. We have the documentation of the green, the values of the green, and so on. But how to specifically engage specific user groups is a challenge. And I'm not happy about just talking about the challenges, as was also mentioned in the introduction, but it is a challenge for the existing organizations to reach out to all the different user groups that are there, and to kind of, being representative of all the different voices being there. And there are many different voices, including the youth, and they're all very different. And there's an overall task of saying, well, public accessible green spaces should in principle be a democratic space and be available for everybody. So how do we also make sure that they are relevant for all the specific user groups? And that is a challenge. And it's especially the challenge to make the effort of actually engaging with all these different user groups while making sure that you are mowing the lawn and pruning the trees. So here I'm actually just lifting the issue and not really giving you an answer. I'm sorry about that.
No, but it's quite key. It's quite key. In fact, there are many voices, but so there is a collective awareness which has to be supported, which has to be identified, and also exactly how do we really engage them accordingly in a way that makes sense, in a way that is just that actions can be concerted. Absolutely. Thank you so much again, Professor Randrup. And and you in fact linked up to already to the question that was in the chat, correct? Okay, I see another question here in the chat, which is how let me read it. How is the sponge? Oh, I tried to read the chat, but then it disappeared.
The sponge cities, as a Chinese approach.
Exactly. There is a very good example in Wuhan, right, in China, about the sponge cities. I think I can see your head nodding, Professor Randrup. So I don't know.
Well, I've read a little bit in China about these sponge cities, but I don't think I can say specifically how the sponge cities are promoting tree growing. But it is an initiative to deal with the climate change and stormwater management with nature. So in that sense, it is trying to make a kind of multifunctionality and develop new cities. And I think the most prominent results from China is that in new city developments, it has proven to be much easier to kind of promote these kind of multifunctional systems, whereas in existing city areas, just like in Europe, it's super challenging because of lack of space simply. But I think there's a lot of good results in promoting nature and trees via the sponge city approach.
This very example of the sponge cities in China is quite a promising one, and again, when it's about best practices, we really have to be looking at how replicable they are across and throughout. Absolutely.
I believe that
the audience.
Yeah, you're back now. We lost you the last 10 seconds. The connection dropped on your end, Stefania.
Yes, because my question, yes, my question would rather be, I mean, just as we're just slowly going towards the wrap up. First of all, how cities can make sure that
I believe, did you want to comment on any of the previous questions, meeting? Yes. Just while Stefania is reconnecting.
Thank you for the question about use. It is important to leave no one behind. We fully support this UN principle, and during Jashil Murah's campaign, which I mentioned during my presentation, we invite all public and private schools and kindergartens. Usually youth are, are actively participated in our events. Oh, this one.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yes, Stefania, you're back.
Not
Sorry,
really.
I'll hand back to you.
Yes, not about sustainable cities, inclusive.
I think that I'll step in because there seems to be a problem with the connection. We are also coming up against the end of the meeting, so I just want to have a chance for one last question, if there are any, before we hand back to Stefania for closing remarks. I see one in the chat on. It says, I think all cities should develop strategies for protecting trees from ozone emission. Is there any policy on that in the cities that present it?
Bishkek has a development program, Bishkek 2026, landscaped and green capital, where all these measures are included. This program has been developed by the mayor's office, and all stakeholders are included during discussions of this draft program. So we try our best to hear all voices during the discussion of this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I mean, I have to say that unfortunately we have to be getting towards the closing of this very interesting, insightful, and inspirational discussion. When we started the panel, we had open questions, and I think that a lot of answers are there now. How to foster vibrant communities with urban trees, and how planning ensures the benefits of urban trees to be inclusive and sustainable, and how local implementation links YEST into national global goals. We have seen, you know, the political and sociological perspective. We have seen the science one, and we have seen how in practice municipalities local actions happen. I can't but thank enough the three panelists, Mr. Randrap, Mrs. Soares, but also our speaker from Mrs. Kandialeva. It's been absolutely a pleasure for me to be coordinating this panel, and I really want to thank UNECE for fostering, encouraging these important discussions. We are all aware that it's only through partnership, that is only through pulling together science, governance, and practical examples that things can be brought up and be promising for a greening future for all of us. Thank you for all the organizers. I've been so much in touch over the last weeks with Daniel and Lisa and Liliana, and of course the director, Mrs. Paola Dada, and I again bringing in also architecture stars has been quite a beam, you know, of hope for everybody. Thank you. We keep in touch. All the presentations will be available for the interested stakeholders, and this is certainly one step for more concerted action to be happening together. Thank you. You can.
Thank you.
You can also see here the QRs for Trees in Cities Challenge and Cities with Nature, the QR that you can scan to be joining in. Being part of this collective experience, make the change. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.